I'm Sue Camilleri, and this is Poetry Leaves. My guest today is John Hazard, a local poet and former instructor, right, John?
Right.
Welcome to Poetry Leaves.
Thank you.
So you come from a small town in Ohio, is that correct?
Right. Southern Ohio. That's important to notice.
That makes it very southern, doesn't it?
It's a whole different place.
Yeah. Isn't Ohio the gateway to the South?
Well, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do you come from a family of poets, instructors? Tell me a little bit about your childhood.
My father was a small town lawyer, self-made man, went back to his hometown and hung out a shingle. And my mother was a high school teacher, although she only did substitute teaching once I came along into the world.
Ah, okay.
And once he was able to get his law practice going.
Sure. So that's probably where you came into your interest in education.
It could be. I think the plan was for me to go to law school and come back and join his practice, and then he would ease out, become a judge, which he did without me. But I just couldn't get interested in law, especially legal English. So in a way, maybe the poetry is a protest against law.
Yeah. Are there two things any more different, right?
Well, it seems that way. Although I had a lawyer say once at a career day that he was advocating that these students take as many courses in poetry, not the writing of it, but the reading of it, as they could if they wanted to go to law school, because both kinds of reading involve close study of language, and so it works for, in his opinion, it would have been a good prep.
Wasn't that interesting?
It was to me.
And you, well, in a courtroom scenario is what I'm picturing right now. You are speaking to people and trying to evoke emotions.
Yes.
So
there is that comparison. You can become as lyrical, I suppose, as you want to.
Yeah. And now they're doing their own TV commercials. So
right.
You need all this elocution practice, right?
Right.
So when did you end up coming to Michigan then?
In 1972, I got a job at Cranbrook, which is a boarding school. In part, it's about 1/3 boarding and 2/3 day students in Bloomfield Hills. And I wanted a job, needed a job, and they were there. So I never dreamed of ending up in Greater Detroit or Lesser Detroit or any kind of Detroit. But
well, I'm sure all our viewers are very familiar with Cranbrook. It's got a absolutely stellar reputation. But
good.
But it was quite a job, I understand.
Yes, we were talking about living in a dorm, which I did my first 7 years there as a 27 to 34-year-old married man. And the last, 5 years of that with children. So it makes for a busy life. But it was really interesting and enjoyable.
Well, in our earlier discussion, you were saying that you would have to sit at tables, at meals with your students.
Yes.
And have interesting conversation.
Yes.
That had to be exhausting for you, but a good practice for the kids, I would think.
Probably. And Cranbrook is more relaxed and casual about those things than a lot of the Eastern schools. We only had sit-down dinners when I was there once a week, and dormitory duty once a week. And in some of the Eastern boarding schools, they double and triple that. It's smaller groups. The Cranbrook dorms hold maybe 100 kids. So being on duty is much busier. Whereas I hear that in the Eastern schools, a dormitory can be an old house, and it's 7 or 8 kids and one faculty member. So being on duty can mean being at home, being by a phone. So I don't know.
Well, they do have some beautiful old buildings on that campus, I have to say.
They do.
Yeah. And what did you teach there?
Mostly 10th grade and 12th grade English. the 10th grade is kind of was kind of a mishmash of just genres, poetry, fiction, and drama. And in the 12th grade, we had electives, and I created one called Current Literature. I still don't like the title, but I don't know what to call it because it's more than contemporary. It's specifically current. Oh. And in the first years of it, I actually ordered literary magazines for the students, 7 or 8 of them. And that meant I had to read all this stuff, scout what I thought might work for class. Maybe I'm a masochist, I don't know. But that was work, and I gradually figured a way to soften it some. But that was the one I taught a lot, and then a creative writing elective in the other semester.
Okay. Yeah. Did you get a lot of kids interested in the poetry aspect of it?
Sure. I don't know, really. How many minds did I change? I don't know. Because poetry is serious poetry is a hard sell. To adults, never mind teens.
Yeah, well, sure, and that's the whole project we're doing here with Poetry Leaves. We're trying to bring it down from the ether into everyday experience.
Right.
And thanks to people like you who are willing to give us some of your time and share your knowledge and your writing, we can do that for our residents here in Waterford and the general area.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of the Best American Poetry of each year. I was just reading the introduction to 2018 by Dana Gioia, and he lays out very clearly the changing landscape of poetry. That you've got hip hop and performance poetry at one extreme, and then people still writing in rhyme and meter. In fact, he says there's a resurgence of serious rhyme and meter, not hickory dickory dock, but Keats and those guys.
Well, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah, yes, you do. Hickory dickory dock is okay at one point, but it's a vast field. It is, as he points out, both very unpopular compared to previous periods in American history, and yet more people are participating in it in one way or another. So he doesn't know what that means, and neither do I.
Yeah. Well, and I was going to comment on that. As most people may be aware, April is National Poetry Month, and I'm finding that there are events all over the country relating to poetry, exposing people to poetry readings. And right. I don't remember that ever being the case before.
Same here. I certainly never heard of a poetry reading until I went to college, and that was 100 years ago. But now they're everywhere, at least here in Greater Detroit, and my sense is it's all over the country.
Yeah, I have a sister that lives down in Florida, and we share our amazement, really, because poetry has been sort of out of the mainstream. Mm-hmm. But we're doing our bit to bring it in, right?
Good for you, too. Yes. Yeah. If you have any magic tricks, let me know.
So, yeah, we spoke about how difficult it is to come up with subjects. So, for people who aren't familiar with Poetry Leaves, just briefly, we invite everyone to submit poems. Professional poets, amateur poets, new poets, just submit a poem. And as part of that group of people who have pulled this event together, I try to submit a poem every year too.
Good.
And never having written one before, it was a bit of a challenge. But the hardest part was, my gosh, what's the subject going to be?
Yeah.
Well, we were at a poetry event a little while ago, and a friend of mine was telling me about his sister, who was a real crazy, radical person. And he said she sold her trumpet and bought a motorcycle. And I thought, if that is not the opening line of a poem, I don't know what it is.
Yes.
So I was able to take that and run with it.
Yes.
So you just never know, right, where your inspiration will come from.
And I think that hits on a larger subject, really, about how to define material, which is just look around at other people or landscapes or objects. And I've heard a number of poets talk about, Well, it's not just poets now. It's being in the moment, mindfulness, I guess, and being, I don't know if this is quite the same, but being woke, which is new slang, and I kind of like it, I must say. But I often can't get going in my house, so I will go out to lunch, and I'm just deluged with things. Oh, that could be a poem. That could be a poem. There's a story, and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I guess, voyeuristic or stalking, but it's where the material is, I think.
Yeah.
Or, of course, it's down in here, and a lot of people are more comfortable with that than.
Well, sure. So you draw a lot of inspiration from previous experiences and
Yes.
things that happen in your childhood, stories from your parents, your families, etc., but also from around you.
Right.
Yeah, that's
Right.
good. That's good.
There's no shortage of subjects, but you have to, you and the subject have to be somehow on the same wavelength, and that doesn't always happen.
Yeah, you were saying that writer's block can be an issue sometimes.
Yes. I've never heard a writer who didn't say that.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Everybody has a dry spell.
Yeah.
Well, I understand you have a couple poems you're going to be reading for us today.
That's what I understand as well.
Well, good.
It
I'm
must
glad
be
we're on
true.
the same page. No pun intended.
No pun intended.
Okay, well, when we come back after the break, John will be reading a couple poems for us, and then afterwards we can talk about that.
Suppositions about the milkman. The truck grunts along streets, black even these June mornings. The fine stuff he totes demands stealth, deadly eggs, fatty milk, butter, butter, butter. From the CD player, Leontine Price rolls arias through every pothole on the route. He saw a movie once about an Italian trucker. He hates dogs, especially the skewed stare, cocked head of the half-blind cocker. Hates anything to do with darkness. He is completely faithful to his wife. When he retires soon, first thing he'll do is sleep till 6, then rise, hold a white globe of egg in his palm, and let it fall. Watch it drop through lit kitchen space and splatter gooey orange on the clean, hard floor. And he will say his name, Floyd, again and again. Luann again, southeastern Ohio. Reunion. Some sit almost nameless in a motel conference room. Red and gold balloons, folding chairs, and ham. 40 years. Some have thickened into silence. Some are hard. For all I know, those faces on a normal day might stare over sinks, dandelion yards, the children's children playing there, grass-stained photo ops. But who will tell the stories of Shirley, Fred, especially Luann, who lived in town? Sometimes I dream about that dog of hers, brown or maybe tawny, hit by a car outside my uncle's grocery. It lay in its blood as she fled crying to the family store, hardware, paint. The way I ran home later that year, fat old Rudy, coal truck, as I watched by the side of the road. Her dog was bloodier. In the place that she's inherited, is her silence richer too than my packages of words? I wouldn't be the reporter she would choose. But here I am, Luann, to say I regret the vast rock between us. For all I know, the dogs of your other life, not frisky, not mean, not especially sweet, have been steady, staring for scraps or staring from a porch at grass in a breeze. For all I know, your other dogs were happy and lived forever.
Okay, well, we're back, and those were two pretty good poems, I have to say.
Thank you.
You know, we spoke about what inspires you, and clearly those were from your childhood, your youth.
Well, yes and no. The second one was from that location, and then, of course, the 40th reunion, high school reunion.
Mm-hmm.
The first one, I realized this, I was trying to, in choosing the poems, find one that was a little bit on the light side, which I think the Milkman poem is, at least to me, it is. However, the Milkman I had in mind was in Bloomfield Hills, not Southern Ohio. So, and people, when they read it, most people said, I didn't know we still had milkmen or milk persons.
Milk persons,
yeah.
yes, yeah.
So it was meant to be, I guess you could say, a city poem or suburban poem, but it comes across as a small town poem.
It does. It definitely does, yeah.
Yeah.
So I remember milkmen when I was a kid growing up.
Yes.
And there's always that tired old joke about the milkman. The kid looks like the milkman.
Yes. Yes.
So I thought that one line about him being faithful to his wife was...
It's an entire stanza. It's its own stanza, that one long line. And I realize now I should have mentioned that old notion that you just did.
Yeah.
Because younger people would have no idea why I would stick that in there. But
they would have no idea what a milkman is.
Well, that's true. That's true.
The whole thing would be like, what was that?
Right, right.
Yeah.
But anyway, I was going for a lighter, not Southern Ohio small town poem, and I foiled myself. And then the other one I think is darker. And it's clearly a small town poem.
So did that actually happen? Is that based on facts?
In the second one?
Yes.
Pretty much. The two dogs are true.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I remember I probably bored a lot of people by telling the story. I think I was maybe 8. And we lived in a rented house about 3 doors down from the major road through town. There was no interstate at that point. And I had this wonderful dog, Mutt, but he chased cars. And this one day I was out with a couple of friends up by the highway, and he went after a semi, and I was yelling at him to stop. And then suddenly he was lying down. And I thought, and if I had thought he was such a smart dog, even my parents said that, I thought, he realizes what to do to survive this. And he's lying down under the semi so it can pass over him. And he'll pop up any second now. And he didn't.
That wasn't the case,
Yeah.
Well,
his classmate's dog was, my uncle didn't have a grocery. I had to make that up. I should tell.
That's okay. As we said, poetic license.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Yeah. They say that it's good for kids to have pets, to teach them these life lessons, you know.
Yes.
And you're sharing that pain.
Yeah, it was at the time.
Yeah.
I think I'm over it, except that I remember it.
Why, sure.
Yeah.
Those things you don't forget.
Yeah.
So I like the part about the potholes, which makes it a little unbelievable in the Milkman's one, that it could possibly have been in Bloomfield Hills. But you do, it just adds enough detail that you feel like you're really there with him.
There are some in Bloomfield Hills.
Okay.
Believe me.
Okay, good.
Some
We don't need to fill.
completely unpaved roads.
Yeah. On the subject of the milkman one, I was going to say something else, and I have completely eluded me at the moment.
I can't help because I did get the idea for that somewhere, and I don't remember where. I mentioned the Italian trucker in a movie. Maybe that really happened. Maybe I really saw a movie involving an Italian milkman or trucker.
Arias.
And he was listening to Leontine Price. I don't know, but it's not the kind of thing I usually think about.
Yeah, I don't know that I've ever heard Leontine Price. I've heard his name, but I don't know that I've heard his music. So what really intrigues me about it was Luann's, well, it doesn't matter
Yes.
which one.
Oh,
Matisse was always known for never finishing a painting. As long as he had a painting in the studio, he was making improvements. It wasn't good enough until somebody finally bought it and put him out of his misery, took the painting away. So I find it interesting that you have an old, it was the Milkman one, wasn't it?
no, the one I had to stop in the middle was
Yeah.
Luann. Yeah.
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 So is that kind of typical? You write a poem and you think, okay, I'm done with that, but then you come back.
It's so typical.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah,
Okay.
it's really annoying. I think it might have been at the reading that was here in Waterford a couple of years ago. Something made me realize that I think it's about 50 poems in the book, that 2 more or less wrote themselves, which is what you always hear about. And the others were just one kind of nasty labor after another. Of course, if we didn't love moving words around, then we wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
So,
But it's funny what it takes to satisfy the poet, the
Yeah.
writer, the
Yeah.
owner of this thing.
yeah.
The difference in one of them was you used suitcase.
Oh, did I? Okay, I didn't even get there.
And, oh gosh, I can't remember. A suitcase full of words versus maybe it was a package.
Packages of words, yes. Yes.
And that was important to you.
It was. It just had a better sound and
And
visual.
I love the kids in pink and blue and grass stains. That just springs
Yes.
to mind. Such a, pastoral summer day, kids
Yes.
outside playing.
Yes. When times were good.
When summers lasted forever.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Those
The
days
one
were-
that I noticed most and it made me stop, I don't know if people are going to see that, was the word progeny.
Yes.
And I changed it to children's children. Progeny just seemed to be screaming, dictionary word. I mean, it's not that.
Thesaurus.
Yes, exactly. It's not that exotic, but it's just you don't hear that word a lot in small towns in southern Ohio.
Yeah, true.
It takes you out of that world, which is the opposite of what I wanted to do.
Yes. You're right. And all of those details paint the picture.
Right.
So you would want it to be right. But I thought that was kind of funny that they're still floating around out in the world, the original.
Yes.
But that's not the poem, no.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope. Yes.
So what are your work habits? Do you set yourself down every day at 8 o'clock with a cup of coffee? And
Almost. Most mornings, it's got to be in the morning. Sometimes I can get good work done after lunch, but not usually. Breakfast, a little bit of news to agitate.
subject matter.
Yeah,
we'll call
subject
it.
matter, perspective, so on and so forth. And then I sit sometimes just staring at a computer screen or a blank sheet of paper, usually computer these days. I'm more comfortable with typing than handwriting. And I'll usually last at least a couple of hours, and if things are going well, it can be 3 or 4 hours. And then that's that.
You're done for the
I'm
day.
drained, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have occasionally written 2 first drafts in the same day, but that's really, I bet maybe 3 times I've done that. I at least have a finite amount of juices, I guess.
Cerebral juice.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
use it all up, yeah. So some people tend to write on a more haphazard, a moment of inspiration. They
Right.
sit down and they write, and that's fine too.
Right.
But other people are a little more organized.
Hearing about writers' habits is very interesting, and I should be over it by now. But there's I think he's mostly a crime novelist named Walter Mosley. And apparently, and he verified this in an interview with Terry Gross. I think it was with Terry Gross a few years ago. I don't know if this can be with PG, but he sleeps in the nude, and every morning he gets out of bed, and he claims goes straight to his typewriter. I'm not sure. I think there might be a stop involved in it first.
Most likely.
And starts typing in the nude and types all morning, and then he's done. And the one thing that writers tend to have in common, it seems to me, is writing in the morning. I don't know if it's coming out of sleep and dreams that is the same part of the brain. I don't know what that is.
Sure.
I read once that Hemingway stood at a podium with a typewriter, I think it was a typewriter, from 6 to noon every day. And then the rest of the day he did what Hemingway did.
Drank.
There
There you go. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's wildly individual.
Sure. So do you have like a lucky pen, anything like that you like to, a little stuffed animal on your desk?
I don't think I do. I've tried to have one. I've tried that.
In desperation.
Yeah. I don't know if I want this on film, but I just bought 2 Cincinnati Reds baseball caps from 1957, I think, or 59 or something like that. The one with a white top for home and the one with a gray top for on the road. And does that inspire poetry? I've never written a baseball poem, but I think it calls that world up to me. And the color red does something to me too. I don't know.
Well, I know that in restaurants they used to always have red upholstery and red flocked walls because the tables turned over faster. You didn't want to hang around too long if it was red. It's not a relaxing color.
Really?
So maybe it just keeps your energy level up high enough to get you through the morning.
It could be. Yes.
Yeah. Colors do have an effect on your
Colors are
psyche.
crazy. We were talking earlier about birds.
Mm-hmm.
I've tried to hate the blue jay because apparently a very nasty criminal bird, and I don't remember what it does. It eats other birds' eggs or kills the young or something like that. But they're so gorgeous. I can't hate them. I hate to see them coming because they bully the cardinal away and so on and so forth. But I think a lot of that is about color.
Yeah, we have so few birds of color
Well,
that we can't afford to hate any of them. Well, John, it has been just a pleasure having you here today. And if anyone is interested in purchasing your book, they can go to Amazon.
Yes.
And the title is Naming a Stranger
right,
by John Hazard.
right.
And
This is not art. This is indicate that it's my work copy.
okay, that's good to know. You have to pay extra for the tape with the blue and red
That's
marks
right.
on
If
it.
you want
Okay.
that, you have to buy your own.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you again so much. It's
Thank
been
you.
a pleasure.
Let me